When discussing some long-running anime such as Dragon Ball Z, the issue of power scaling is often brought up. In the case of DBZ, this refers to how Goku's strength is forced to increase in order to match the ever greater threats he encounters. If allowed, the power scaling problem can quickly spiral out of control. Characters become so ludicrously strong that each further power-up becomes less and less distinguishable from the last. Eventually, the audience loses all sense of the character's abilities and limits. As this goes on, supporting characters, unable to grow at the same rate, become less and less relevant until they are nothing but background elements. In the Dragon Ball example, we are talking about how physically strong Goku is, how hard he can punch essentially. But I think the power scaling problem can also be applied to concepts, which brings me to the case of Pokémon. The first handful of Pokémon games generally kept things pretty low-key in terms of the kind of creatures you could encounter. You have some legendary Pokémon, of course, but their status seemed to be more defined by their strength and rarity than anything else. Then Ruby and Sapphire came along and had you capturing literal gods of the game's world. In this case, the gods of the land and the sea. The next generation with Diamond and Pearl essentially took things to their breaking point, by allowing you to collect not only the gods of time and space, and antimatter, but also the creator of the entire Pokémon universe. Now this might just be a personal hang-up, but it's hard for me to regard Bidoof and God at all the same. But mechanically speaking, you interact with them both very similarly. You put the guy in the ball, and then you make it hit the other guys. Bidoof hangs out in the grass, and Dialga hangs out at his pillar, but that's about as far as the characterization goes in the gameplay itself. There are, of course, the Pokédex entries and other supplemental material if you want to dig a bit deeper, but I digress. Anyway, this is what I find so exciting about the new Pokémon Snap game. It essentially gets back to the basics of the business of Pokémon. Because while yes, on one hand it is an RPG about leveling up and fighting monsters, it's also the fantasy video game equivalent of an entomology project. That element has always been the more compelling one to me. You can objectively measure and compare the base stats of a Mewtwo and a Wooper, but can you objectively measure which one waddles around the forest better? Snap, more than any other spin-off in the franchise, treats Pokemon like real-world animals, with unique habitats, abilities, and behaviors, and this finally levels the playing field for all the Bidoof-likes out there. I'm a big fan of nature documentaries, especially Planet Earth. I think that was pretty much required viewing for most high school science classes from what I can tell, so many of you might be familiar with what I'm about to talk about. The standout moment of the entire series, in my opinion, is this segment on the birds of paradise. This same documentary features a fungus with the actual real-life ability to create suicidal zombie ants, something bordering on science fiction, and yet the highlight for me is a bird that does a funny little dance. This is because in the real world, we don't usually regard living things with respect to how broken their special ability is. It's not like you could even make a meaningful comparison between these two insofar as which is the superior life form or something. Snap endeavors to bring that kind of wonder that documentaries like Planet Earth inspire to a fantasy world, where you get to be the one who's up close with these creatures, capturing them in all their weird splendor. Not only does this naturally make every encounter meaningful, I think it's telling that they haven't felt the need to cram any legendary Pokemon into the trailers. It also brings a much needed realism back to the series. I don't think I've ever given this hippo guy a second thought, but look at him do his little thing here. What's the deal with that? How does he use that in his day-to-day life? For the first time in maybe a decade, Pokemon has engaged my imagination, and that's really exciting. It's a little shocking, but 20 years on, fantasy nature photography is still a novel concept, and I can't wait to return to it in April.